Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Deccan Birders webinar series. And today our speaker is Dr. R. Suresh Kumar. And to introduce our speaker, I would request our BC Chaudhary sir to, our dear BC Chaudhary sir to introduce him please. Sir, over to you.
Okay, thanks Srikant. I think, how do I introduce Suresh? Suresh was a former master's degree holder from the Wildlife Institute of India, as also a PhD from the Wildlife Institute of India on his work on the marine turtles. And he actually wears many caps, starting from monkeys to pheasants to Amur Falcon to cranes. You talk about many things, they said that is Suresh Kumar, has been working on many things. He has been in the Wildlife Institute for almost 25 years now. And his interest is primarily lesser known species on which, many people don't work, such lesser known species, he was working with turtles, on the Wildlife Institute of India, tracking them with reels of threads being put on top of their carapace. And he has been studying the ecology, migration, and movement studies of these lesser known species and developing conservation programs for them. He started his research career with pheasants, and in the Eastern Himalaya, he actually discovered a new Monal pheasant. He also conducted several bird surveys in Arunachal Pradesh, and that helped in identifying several important bird areas. He also found out a new species of monkey in Arunachal Pradesh, Macaca munzala from Western Arunachal Pradesh. From the Eastern Himalaya and Arunachal Pradesh, he actually migrated to Odisha to work in a project of mine on the marine turtle, on the migration patterns of the olive ridley turtles in the Odisha coast. Particularly, he was based in Rusikulia Rookery. And after his doctoral work, he gained a lot of sea experience. And then that took him to the 29th Indian Scientific Expedition to Antarctica, where he spent about 5 months. He probably still have not got off his cold feet as yet. And that from the icy continents to marine mammals to birds, he has been working on the migratory cranes, flamingos in Gujarat, spot-billed pelicans in the Southern Karnataka, barn swallows in the Himalayas, and Amur Falcon in the northeastern India. It was very difficult when I wanted him to talk to the Deccan birders. What is he going to talk about? Because he has such a long range of things on which he has been working. But I said, no, people are more keen to hear about the Amur Falcon. And Amur Falcons, you have tracked them from Nagaland to South Africa. So maybe, you also went to South Africa on your voyage to Antarctica. So let you start talking about the Amur Falcon. So he agreed. And thanks, Suresh, for agreeing to give a talk to our Deccan birders. Maybe many of them, after you talk, will start migrating to Nagaland to see the Amur Falcon. Let's see how interesting you make it so that people will start going to Nagaland to see the Amur Falcon. Over to Suresh.
So thank you so much. I would say I've been really been fortunate, having got many opportunities, and one of the biggest opportunities that I got was working with you for the sea turtle project in Odisha, in my interest in migration studies. So thank you so much, and thanks to the Deccan birders for having in presentation. Thanks to all the viewers, so many of you here, and thanks for your time. And just before I start, I'll just get back, sir. Just 1 second.
Migrated.
Can we have the videos off to increase the bandwidth, please?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm turning it off one by one.
So, so I go ahead and start my presentation, I guess.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I love telling stories, and we have lots of stories to tell, and this particular work on the Amur Falcons has been one exciting journey, and it continues to keep me hooked to the Northeast and to these really fascinating birds. So I'm going to be sharing stories starting all the way back from 2013, and I'm going to give you snippets of what all has gone on. I'm going to give pieces of information on what we know about these birds and what's our understanding about these birds, because that's something like my forte. Any of the species that I'd like to take up for research, it's more about understanding the lives of these animals or these birds. So the Amur has been one really, really satisfying project. And I know there are quite a few of you who are in the audience who have been part of my journey. A few of you have visited the Northeast. So over to the story. So I start with this image. This is from the Wikipedia, and this is about. I don't need to explain this. When you see images like this, it clearly means that there's a lot of birds cutting across the sky, and when you see them flying in such formation, you know that they are heading to a particular destination, or what we would say migration. So this is one such image from the Midlands of America. This is sometime in the 1800s, when people used to witness these mass movement of these birds. And naturally, a lot of sportsmen there, sport hunting, as well as a lot of hunting of these birds used to happen. So this particular bird was apparently so common, and at that point of time, nobody exactly knew where these birds were heading. But they just knew that every year during a particular time of the year or during a season, a lot of these birds would fly across the sky. They would fly in such numbers that it would be completely dark when they fly across, or literally cover the sky. So such was the enormity of these numbers of these birds that people often thought, or the general understanding or the thing was that no amount of shooting or hunting of these birds would it would in any way reduce the population or lead to any decline in the population. But that was not to be true. The image that I actually showed you was of the story of the passenger pigeon. Many of you know today that this particular species has become extinct. So population estimates during the early 19th century ranged from 1 billion to 4 billion individuals. So naturally, there were a lot of these birds, and they were making these migrations across the American continent, from Eastern America, Northeastern America, New York and Boston and those areas, and going down towards Central America. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but I have a connection with the story that I'm going to tell you today. And as I told you, that the general feeling was that no amount of exploitation could endanger a creature. That was the understanding. But from 4 billion individuals, it was reduced to just one single female in 1914, and that was at the Cincinnati Zoo when it died at last. So there were a lot of efforts at that point of time. Like many of you know, today there are quite a few recovery programs for bringing back species that we know are on the way to extinction. So similarly, way back in way back in the early 19th century, there was a lot of efforts, a lot of search was made to look for a mate for the single female, but she died a loner at the zoo. So the species became extinct. And but at the same time, this actually set off a major conservation movement. This was an eye-opener for conservationists, for people to look at what they're doing to the planet and what they're doing with these species of these animals. So even such large species which were in such numbers, in high in abundance, were brought to extinction. So why I wanted to highlight this was that also that
Yeah, I think there is a small technical glitch, guys. Just give us a second. Just give me a second. Just contacting Dr. Suresh. Yeah, Dr. Suresh Srikanth here. Uh, just bear with us for about 2-3 minutes, please. He's coming back on, please.
the government, the state government of Nagaland, and the ministry to do something about this. So that's a different story. But Rohan from Green Humor rightly pointed out in this cartoon, which clearly states that, I'm going to read it. Okay, I'm a little confused. The Amurs are speaking. Are we supposed to be amongst the world's fastest hunters or the world's fastest hunted? So naturally, the scale at which the harvest was happening was definitely not something that was going to be sustainable. So these species, like the passenger pigeons, were on the way out. So that is what was the scale of hunting. And where was all of this happening? Nagaland, and in this very picturesque, in a remote valley in Nagaland, and in these forests adjoining the wire that you see, where these birds were roosting, and that is where this hunting was taking place. So basically, a lot of fishermen who used to fish here, one of them actually found a way to actually catch these birds using the same fishing net. So I'm not going to go into all of those details. Many of you are already well aware about it. But while we got to understand about this particular issue happening in Nagaland, it was also the time that many of us actually woke up to understand the geography of Nagaland. So that Nagaland is a highly sensitive state, political disturbance, and of course the remote that very few people actually ventured. So thanks to bird watchers and conservationists, Srinivasan and his group, who were going into some of these areas for the first time, and they chanced on this particular event and brought it to the knowledge of everybody, and that set things off. So when I look at the Amurs today, okay, look at their eyes, big eyes, like any other raptor, bird of prey, very deep eyes. When I look at them, there is some mystery. There's a lot of stories that these birds have to tell us. We need to understand them. So it was also like, till then, nobody actually spoke about the Amurs. There were a lot of other birds that everybody used to speak, or a lot of other raptors, the vultures and many of the other species. But very few people, actually, even seasoned bird watchers, would rarely talk about this Amur falcon. So when I started off with this work, it was also the same thought species. Why is it coming to Nagaland, or why is it coming to Northeast India? Come to that story. So what we know about the Amurs is that this is the least, okay, sheerly because of their population that is estimated to be close to 1 million individuals, and they have a wide distribution range, the breeding distribution range as distribution range. So the IUCN Red List assessment clearly placed the species under the least concern. So as a result, very little research had been carried out on this bird. So our knowledge of the species was breeding ground, which is in the Amur region, and so the name Amur Falcon, and is in Southern Africa. So they are moving from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, which means they're crossing the equator. So they are trans-equatorial migrants. And that is also reported in the literature, is that they are trans and elliptical migrants, which means they go down in one particular direction and return back in another direction. Before the satellite tracking study, the stories that I'm going to share with you, before that, there was very new about their migration routes. The activity that we undertook was also to understand that. So before we go into the Amurs, let me give you a little bit more background. India rightfully falls under the Central Asian flyway region. And we know that a lot of birds come in from the northern latitude. Winter in India. They spend many of the species come in from parts of India, while a lot of species do specialize in crossing the high Himalayan ranges. So we do have a fairly good understanding of the birds' movements from the west, but there has been very little focus on birds actually coming in from the east. Now, after all these years of working in the northeast, we do now sense that there is a good number of species, good number of populations moving in from the east through the. So the Amur is one such species that comes into India, and it is a passage migrant. That it does not, its final destination is not in India, but it has to pass through India, or it does pass through India. And the northeast is one of the major stopover sites for this particular bird. So if you go back and look at literature, and there are reports by Salim Ali and few others who do talk about the Amurs coming and stopping over during the autumn months, which is October, November, for about 3 to 4 weeks, and 50,000 plus birds roosting in some of these mountainous tracts. And there is also mention about harvest. So this species has always been harvested. It's possible that we did not know about it, or there was not much information coming out from these areas about this large-scale hunting. But no doubt in 2012, something different had happened. And that was more at a commercial that was going on. So these birds come here, stop here to rest, and then disappear, only to be seen again in October, November of the next year, suggesting the elliptical migration. That is, go down in one particular direction and come back in the other direction. Started the work when we tried to collate all the sightings of the Amurs across India. Now, if I look back, if I look at the eBird now, I'm sure that's flooded with a lot of Amur sightings across the landscape, because a lot of people have become aware about. So you see that majority of the locations are along the western coast.
Dr. Suresh, we seem to have lost you again.
Into the continent, and then moving down to the Western Ghats, and from there heading to Africa, which means that they are making an oceanic crossing. This is a terrestrial bird, okay, and making this oceanic crossing is definitely a risk, at least from the way we perceive it. But these birds, we know that they're very smart. They have evolved to make, so it must be just a flight for them. But even then, there must be certain environmental drivers, certain factors that must be governing as to when they should start on these migrations. So we'll come to those stories, but definitely quite interesting stories that was coming here. A few of the sightings that's coming from Gujarat, those sightings were primarily during the month of April and May. So, but the rest of the sightings all along the Western Ghats, and a few sightings coming from Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Sri Lanka. So if the birds were there in the Andamans, then they probably were crossing the Bay of Bengal too. So we still don't know all of that, but it looks like these birds can do quite a lot of things. So when this hunting was happening, it was again a major challenge for us, simply because of the reason that we are a signatory of the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species. So it is a responsibility of India to protect all migratory species, and we couldn't just be a silent spectator to watch what was going on in Nagaland. There was a general feeling that nothing is possible. Everything and anything that moves in Nagaland is eaten up. So it's going to be very difficult to control these people from hunting or to stop this harvest per se. But then we had to do something. So that was another major challenge. No doubt, when this issue was highlighted in 2012, the Nagaland State Forest Department, along with NGOs and individuals, started taking up conservation measures across the particular village in question, the area in Nagaland where the large-scale hunting was being reported. So this did create quite a bit of awareness. For the first time, even the forest officials were moving into these villages, talking to people, asking them to stop hunting, and that these birds are very important and that they should not hunt them. And so it did gain the support of people, and they did make a promise that they would not kill these birds when they arrive again in 2013. So this is happening sometime in early 2013, sometime in January, February. That particular year in 2012, that hunting was taking place, and whatever birds that did arrive all went off to Africa. So there is this is quite a historic picture for me, because today when we talk about conservation movement in Nagaland, or for that matter, Northeast, one institution that has been majorly responsible was the church. Now there are several. Quite interestingly, I like to highlight this particular gentleman here. His name is Hemant Kamdar, and Forest Department. He's from the Indian Forest Service. Thankfully, Maharashtrian, and he was posted there, a young person, and he had just finished his training at the Wildlife Institute on wildlife management, and very much enthusiastic in conservation. So he was posted there immediately to take care of this issue, to stop the harvest of these birds. He was partly working, he was majorly working with the local communities, educating them about the importance of these birds and that they should not hunt them. So naturally, in the start, from the department, and that was a lady officer who belonged to this community and that particular site. They both were door to door and talking to people and passing on this message of conservation. But then in Nagaland, people are very busy. They all leave very early in the morning to their fields and come back very late in the evening. So very often you're not able to meet with them. So then there was this idea that they chanced upon, was that why not we meet everyone at the church? Because Nagaland, the majority of the people are of the Christian faith, and visiting the church on the Sunday for the Sunday Mass is they have to do it very religiously. So, and they did, at the church. And before talking to the people at the pastor, happened that the pastor was very enthusiastic and very much interested in conservation. So that's how the story. So converted the pastor to speak more about conservation and about protection of these species. And after every prayer on a Sunday, the sermon following some discussions on how they should protect biodiversity and how they should stop hunting these birds in their village, in the Amur Falcons. So it actually set a stage for initiating other activities. The ground was made for initiating activities like the satellite tracking that I'm going to talk about. Now, there was a lot of documentaries that were shown to them. In all of these villages, people do watch Animal Planet and National Geographic and whatnot, wildlife programs. But this was guided training. It's not just sit and watch a movie and go home. It was basically telling them about these interesting snippets about these animals made a difference. So all of these things, actually, I would say, definitely prepared for what was going to happen in 2013. So in 2013, the Amurs did arrive, which they always do. And interestingly, here there was zero hunting. Literally, village in Pangti village out to hunt these Amurs. So this is something unbelievable that happened. So the local people kept up their promise of not hunting birds. And in the coming same National Geographic reporters and a whole lot of other media covered the positive story. Safe passage for Amur falcons through India. India Naga tribe pledges to protect the falcons. So how is this possible? In 2012, particular village hunting birds in such mass numbers, and in all of them to protecting these birds. And believe me, all of this is happening in Nagaland, where we generally think that everything and anything that moves is eaten. So this is one example to say, and this is also one of the, I don't have in saying this. It's not that I've been part of this program and I'm saying this, but this is one of the biggest conservation success stories in the world. So the steps taken toward this were actually initiatives from the people themselves. Later on, added on to that and brought in information which was very, very important. So today we know that Nagaland is the falcon capital of the world. Now it's also Manipur. We've been carrying out research in the Manipur, adjoining areas in Manipur too. So particular region is the falcon capital of the world. If you look at the speck here is an Amur falcon. So it's just unbelievable number of birds. And I've been able to, or this image only captures a certain section, 360-degree view. You will have Amurs coming in around 4:30. For a short while, they all descend into a small patch of forest. And by very early in the morning, they leave. So this is a spectacle to watch. And everyone who's interested, who's listening to this presentation, I would highly recommend you Nagaland and look at this spectacle. This is just unbelievable. So when I look at every year, when I go back, so I have been visiting Nagaland like annual pilgrimage and look at these Amurs coming into roost, and you're never satisfied with the view. You just want to keep on seeing this every day. So when I see this spectacle, it goes back to these initial few talked about the passenger pigeons. To me, this is nothing but the reincarnation of the passenger pigeons. The Amurs are almost the same body size, similar things as that of the passenger pigeons. So now coming to the story about what I have primarily been involved in, which is basically tracking the long distance migration of the Amurs. So prior to this work, there have been some efforts to track the Amurs. There was a South African who has tagged a few Amurs. They did go across India and went past, but there was not much information that was available. But so so naturally around the same time, this had started. And there were several questions when we started this work. Why is it that in 2012, the Amur falcons were hunted in such large numbers? Were they not hunted in the previous year? Was it not being reported? There was hunting, but it just went unreported. That's a possibility. But was it that in 2012, there were such large number of birds arriving in this village? During my initial days, in 2013, talking to the locals there, they all seem to say that. They all seem to say that there's hardly any fish in the reservoir. They're responsible for that. There had been dynamite fishing and the fish population's all gone. And there, in a particular locality, there are a population of elephants that are no longer migratory. Otherwise, they used to move down to the Assam plains and come up. But I believe their corridors have all been lost, and they're stuck in this area. And there's regular crop raiding by elephants, so they lose a lot of their agricultural produce. So there's a lot of problems that these people were narrating. And they said that just when we were, wishing that God give us more food, and then all of a sudden these birds started to, just drop down from the sky the way the people were telling me. And so this was a God-sent thing for us. God answered our prayers, and God-sent thing for us. So this is something, that's for us to eat. And that's how they started hunting these amurs. So those were stories from them. But what got me really thinking was that, why is it in 2012 there were that many Amur Falcons coming to this village? So where were they prior to this? Were they coming from some other locality? So till then, we did not know about the other roost sites. So do the Amurs roost elsewhere in the state or in the region or elsewhere in India? So do they roost in such large numbers in the Western Ghats, in some remote parts of the Western Ghats, or somewhere in central India, in Satpuras or Vindhyas or any of these areas? So why is that the hunting of falcons only reported during October and November? So this does suggest that this may be because of the elliptical migration. Is it that on the way back, they're going via Pakistan and then straight off into Kazakhstan and Mongolia and go back to their breeding grounds? So we needed to understand this. Finally, all of this put together, what are the migration routes? Okay, so they come into the northeast, and how do they go? Do they necessarily take the oceanic route, or do they go via Gujarat and then and make a safer route via the Arabian Peninsula and into? So naturally, we needed to track these birds to understand this. A project where the need for advanced technology was felt. Small birds, they're just weighing about 160 grams, 150 grams, the males, and about 170 to 80 grams are the females. So the females are larger in body size than raptors. So given that the body size is really small, you cannot just put any, you need to consider the weight. The weight of the transmitter was a major limiting factor. So to that, so this project's primary aim was to support conservation efforts. It was basically to tell them from where these amurs are coming. So very often when we go and talk to local people, we are telling them that they're coming from Siberia. Now, a person, a local hunter or a village part of Nagaland, for him, that he knows beyond his particular village, that mountain ridge, how are you going to connect him with the story of they're coming from Siberia? Where is South Africa? So when this particular project was being conceived, the idea was to connect them with the geography from where these birds were coming. And it was not just about going and of course, an outcome of that is to understand migrations. So supporting conservation efforts, identifies, which is very important, and then the migration routes. Now, like I mentioned earlier, tracking amurs posed a challenge because of their weight. So most transmitters at that point of time were weighing about 10 grams to and above. And thankfully in 2009, there was this particular company known as the Macaque from the US who made a 5-gram solar transmitter for commercial use to become available. Now this is a very smart technology. Now in a transmitter, one of the most important unit is the battery. Of course, gadgetry stuff in it, but the battery is what the unit or the equipment. So the larger the battery size, the more longevity or the lifespan of that particular transmitter. Situation where we can't a large battery, and a solar panel, part of the equipment actually brought down the battery to be very small. So this is a very smart technology that's been, And the other thing that we know is that these birds are long-distance migratory species moving and across hemispheres. So conventional way of tracking them, you cannot just go following them with an antenna and looking for them. They need to be tracked via satellite. There are dedicated satellites that we now know as Argos, and there are many other companies who these transmitter, the signals being emitted from these transmitters, and then that information is passed on to a subsequently passed on to tell where exactly is the object or the bird at the time. So thanks to a lot of miniaturization that is happening in the circuitry and many other things, that more and more units are being developed. So this particular transmitter was fixed to the back of the birds like a school bag or a backpack, and with a special harness known as the Teflon harness, the material, it would not cause so much of friction for that. So when we did arrive in 2013 November, that was my first visit to Nagaland, and I was Amur Falcon roosting for the first time. I was accompanied by Hungarian biologists and their stories with relating to their being, but I'll tell you that at some other point of time. So when we did arrive, we didn't expect that we would see birds in such. Really got us wondering was that, how are we going to catch these birds? Okay, there's lots of birds, you can catch them, but you do not want to put up a mist net and catch 1,000 birds. If that is going to be the case, you're going to kill all of them because the net would collapse and you would just basically kill a lot of them. And you also need to understand that at this point of time, the sensitivities were running very, very high. There were quite a few people who were upset about this ban in hunting, and that they're no longer able to, get food for themselves and things like that. And at this point, they're preaching about science. We're preaching conservation and talking to them about the importance of these birds. So sensitivity very, very high. And so we have to do something, like take people into confidence. So though my colleagues who I earlier, the officials from the department, did promise that's nothing to go ahead. Just imagine a situation for conservation work, and you cannot have a situation where you have a group of people netting the same Amur falcon in flocks for the pot or for commercial trade. So it was something that's simply not possible. But thankfully, that year, nothing of that happened. And we went ahead with to net birds. Seeing the numbers, we were super confident, but we were also extra careful that we would place the nets at a place where there wouldn't be that many birds coming into roost, so we can safely catch a few birds and put the transmitters on them and let them go. So we put up these transmitters, and at that point of time, like I mentioned to you earlier, it was my first trip there. I did not know the way these birds were roosting, and our understanding of the birds roosting here was very, very poor. So we put up these nets, the mist nets that we carried, and it was a 4-day program. I had these international biologists with me and my collaborators, and the return journey, everything was fixed. So the first 3 days, we just caught bats. And like I mentioned to you, given the sensitivities, we did not want to involve any local hunter or anyone who knew how to catch these birds. So though there were quite a few people very enthusiastic, offering to help us with this, but I said no, because I mean, it's ethically not right. You're saying, you can catch these birds, you use these hunters to catch these birds for science, but then tell them, no, you can't catch them for food. So they could just simply ask you, is our stomach more important or your science is more important? So the sensitivities were running very, very high. And I told my colleague from the department, no, we will handle this on our own, only to make a poor show. We just caught bats every day. Given that limit, the short duration and the limited time that we had, we knew we were going to fail miserably. And that particular year, it was just that we had to do this tagging to take this information to the local people. Situation seemed to be perfect, just that we need to catch birds. So on the last day, or the day before, it finally gave in. decided that at this rate, we're not going to catch any more birds. We involved those local people who were offering to help. And the next minute, the nets that we were putting at the base of the trees just shot up 25 feet up in the air. These guys knew exactly how the birds were going to fly into the roost and what was the height at which they were roosting. We did sense that they were roosting high up, but how are we going to take this net up? But we had these people who had, these amazing tree climbing skills, could just climb without any ropes or anything like that. And on that particular day, the nets were up there, 3 such nets. And for the first time, we caught 30 birds in that effort. And 30 birds was a fantastic number. And thankfully, no mortality, absolutely no mortality. And we could choose. Now, it is not that we could get anything, but we are now choosers. So we chose 3 of the best birds from the 30. Them for the first time. You can see this net. It was simply possible only because the local people helped us to hoist these nets up nearly 25-30 feet up. So the first of the 3 birds, which is the most popular amongst a lot of birds, the first bird was naga, the second was pankti, and the third was voka. All happened ad hoc. It just happened there. We didn't know. We had not been prepared for it. So rightfully, the first bird that we tagged and named it Naga because the male, a masculine name. Then the next bird was Voka. I and a colleague of mine, we tagged this bird and released it. The third bird, we named it Pankti. Sense that, who's going to release Pankti? In fact, the first bird, Naga, was released by the Chief Wildlife Warden of Nagaland at that point of time, Mr. Lokeshwar Rao, who's from Andhra Pradesh and PCCF and half of Nagaland there. And he was also very much instrumental in this particular activity to be initiated. So thanks to him. And so we handed, so rightfully we thought Naga should be released by him, and he released the bird and Naga just flew away. And then I and my colleague from CMS, we both wanted to release Voka. We released this, and Pankti was getting prepared. So each of these transmitters getting it onto their back, it takes some time. It takes about an hour or so. So in that time, there's a thought that came in, and I told my colleague from the department saying that Pankti should be rightfully released by the people of Pankti, at least for the promise that they kept. So immediately we went, we arranged for some vehicles to go up to the village and bring whosoever were there from the village to come down to the site of capture and release, and we handed over Pankti over to them. And the man in the red t-shirt here, he's the village headman. So we handed over the bird to him and asked him to release. Just when he was about to release this bird, there's this person here. He is the pastor who was involved in the conservation awareness work right from the start at this village. Stop. We cannot release this bird without offering a prayer to the bird. So can imagine at that point of time, I literally had goosebumps because all of these people, the local people here, had eaten amurs. And here was a situation, the same people in just 1 year time were now praying for the welfare of this bird, wishing that she goes safely to wherever her destination is and come back to the village the next year. So this was a moment, a lifetime memory for me, and it has really, really influenced a lot of people from these stories. So soon after release, it was 7th of November when the birds were released, then the incredible stories started to flow in. Naga was the first to depart from the roost site in Pankti and started to fly 1,000 kilometers straight down over the Sundarbans and then the Bay of Bengal, cutting in across in northern Andhra Pradesh, the Vishakhapatnam Ghats, and then heading down straight towards Mumbai, northern Goa, and that particular region, and then fly across the Arabian Sea straight to Somalia. So clearly, our earlier understanding that a lot of birds coming into the Western Ghats, so they are making this oceanic crossing, going into Somalia. Now, what was incredible was the 5,600 kilometer flight was made non-stop. 5 days and 10 hours non-stop flight. As we know today, many of the that we have, 17 hours is the longest that they can fly. They need to land to be refueled. So here is a small bird weighing about 160 grams and making this incredible migration. So when this story was shared with the people of Panti, you know, they were just in awe of the creationist, what God has created, and that these birds are extremely unique. So straight away, the birds' position in their understanding of biodiversity really shot up. So again, this is trying to tell you that how this tracking information was actually changing their mindset. Now, there was this other very interesting thing that we did. Most often, when we as researchers go to our field sites and do research, we do a lot of tracking or do our research. Come back, we do have local people helping us, assisting us with the work. We come back and put together a report and publish it. Now, very often, we don't have the local people themselves tracking it. So when we initiated this study to support conservation efforts, so why not actually train the people to track the birds, their own birds, themselves? Why is it that I need to call them and tell them? So thankfully in this village, in Panti, there was a lot of young kids and literacy rate is very high. And they were already into WhatsApping and interneting and all that. There was in good village. And all that we needed to do was to show them that there is this particular website called satellitetracking.eu where we hosted all of these birds. This is under the European Union, whatever funds that is provided for such kind of research activity, this needs to be hosted on this website for the public, for to know where their money is being spent. So I just requested my colleague that I cannot make a website, I would just like you to, basically 3 birds so that I can share this URL with the locals. So from then on till today, as I speak now, the locals have been tracking these birds themselves. So satellitetracking.eu can also be used by any of you listening to this presentation to go birds that are currently active. So this made a big difference. So in fact, it became so much that people got so involved in this that they could sense, they could get an understanding of the geography. This is exactly what we were wanting to do. That is connect them to the geography across the world, know beyond the ridges of their own village, where else are these birds going. So perfect example of community involvement and the awareness about bird migration or the Amur Falcon migration. So it is to this extent that today, many of these people who are tracking birds who continue to keep in touch with me, they call me up and ask me, hey, the Amur is coming. Are you coming to Nagaland this year or not? So that's the kind of involvement. So one of the, like every conservation story, there are challenges. And same here. What kind of compensation can be given to the people here? Now, people were initially talking about how Amur falcons were important part of their livelihood. It is a season of bounty. Harvesting them was important, to sustain them. So now all of a sudden this ban, and there has to be some form of compensation. I'm not saying there has to be, but invariably it is looked up in that way. So what do? Here was a situation where we cannot just pay money to everyone in the village or compensate them monetarily, or there was alternate kind of compensation. But thankfully, there were really enlightened individuals, amazing individuals with very strong leadership skills who could actually voice conservation far more than many of us can actually do. So all that many of these villages, I'm not making it very simplistic or I'm not romantic, but at least a majority of the people, a majoritarian view was that this is part of our landscape and that we need to protect it. So it was more about biodiversity conservation, it was more about conservation of the Amurs, and all that they wanted was a form of recognition. So we started getting them letters of appreciation from international bodies like IUCN and the CMS, and handing it to them to actually appreciate them for the efforts or to the steps that they have taken to conserve. In fact, in this particular poster, this was sent in by Chinese bird watchers, a children's bird watching society, saying that thank you Nagaland, thank you people of Nagaland for protecting the Amurs. Because of you, we continue to see the Amurs. So this was another way of connecting communities from distant regions, So this is exactly what we need to be doing in order to get them more involved in the conservation work. So every year, Nagaland is full of festivals. So the Amur Falcons arrival again is celebrated like a big festival. There's a cake cutting ceremony that happens, and thankfully Naga and Pangti kept coming back to Nagaland. 2014, 15, and then 16. Till date, those people in Pangti believe that it is because of their prayers that the birds kept coming back to the village. So this is again an amazing connect of how their beliefs and thankfully, thanks to the transmitters, that they performed really, really well. So what we have now known is that it is not just Pangti. This is the reservoir. This is where the famous Amur Falcon roost site Pangti is. But we know that there are large similar roosts elsewhere. So it is not just one population or a million or hundreds and thousands of Amur Falcons in one particular roost site, but equally in similar numbers at this particular site in another remote area in Nagaland known as Yongyamchen. Then there's a site here, and then there's one here, and then in Tangki National Park, there's another site here. And now we know that there are sites even in Manipur. So it has actually scaled up our work to understand why is it that these birds are coming and roosting here. Nagaland state, there is a lot more remoter parts of Nagaland. Why is it that they're not roosting there? Why is it that they're not roosting in the Myanmar side? This is the Myanmarese border and Myanmar side. So again, lots of stories, but I will not have much time to talk about it here. In 2015, the Inspector General of Director Wildlife Institute of India had come to Nagaland. I kept requesting them, sir, saying that we need to take credit for this. You need to take credit. You had, there's an amazing program happening here, and people are looking forward to your visit here. So they did come here and go back, and the Inspector General of Forests reported to the Union Minister, Sri Prakash Javadekar, about what he saw. The next minute, the minister decided that he wants to go to Nagaland. So I got a call from my director saying, the minister's coming, you stay back. The minister came, and I had this opportunity to interact with him. And he was totally in awe of what he was seeing. He couldn't just believe his eyes. He was just mesmerized by the sheer number of Amur Falcons. And that I want to tag a bird. Where is the transmitter? So I told him, sir, all that I had, we've already done. We don't have a project. And we need a project to do the tagging. Okay, so I will give you the project. You go ahead, and when next year I will come, and then we should do the tagging. I said, this is perfect. And I told him at that point of time that the Pangti is not the only roost site. There are many other roost sites. By 2015, people from all of the other roost sites had started voicing this, that why is it that nobody is coming to our village and recognizing our efforts? Or why is it that you're not doing satellite tagging in our village and naming the bird after our village? So they named the bird Pangti, and Pangti became very famous. And so every other village where these birds were roosting, the locals were insisting that we should catch a bird in their village and tag them. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to tell the minister that, sir, this is what is something that the people actually, he liked the idea. He said, yes, I'm sanctioning this project. You have to take this up next year, and I'm coming to Nagaland to release the Amur. The minister's visit definitely scaled up the interest of a lot of media coverage. And in 2016, the next phase of the Amur Falcon conservation started off with 5 of these birds, and as promised, tagged from different parts of or different roost sites from Nagaland. And then they were also respectively named as per what the local people desired. So coming to the overall story, so we now know that they move between the northern China and all the way down to South Africa, and they go down in a particular direction and return back in another direction. So it's an elliptical migration. On the way down south, they go down, take the route via peninsular part of India, but on the return journey, they fly over the Gangetic Plain and return back to Nagaland. And what is also interesting here is that they breed at 45-degree north latitude, north of the equator, and winter 26 degrees south. So they are traveling incredible, they're covering incredible amount of latitudes. So naturally you will wonder why. Why should these Amurs travel so far? Why can't they just stay in India just like any other bird? Nagaland does offer them good amount of food. That's another part of the story. We now know that they're there in Nagaland, not just because they're resting or they're just on, it's on passage. There's a path in the middle that they stop and then they move on. No, they are there for a very, very specific reason, which I will tell you later. So why can't they continue to stay there? Why should they go all the way down? Now, let me break that story here. So this bird never sees winter. When they travel down to Southern Africa, when they arrive here towards end of December or in January, when they arrive here, the summer begins in the Southern Hemisphere. Winter up here, it is summer down here. So as soon as the winter starts setting in or autumn starts setting in, they start to depart from here, finish breeding, and then go down all the way down to South Africa and spend the summer months there. And as soon as the winter starts to set in here, they again depart. So this is a super smart bird sensing summer or seeing summer all through their lifetime. Why summer? Summer means the day length is, when the day length is very long, the productivity is very, very high. It is also during this time, the growth phase. There's a high amount of precipitation. There's good amount of food. Primarily, it again varies as to where they are. In the steppe landscape of Manchuria or eastern steppe country in northern China and Mongolia, eastern Mongolia and the Amur region, they're primarily foraging on voles or rodents and supplemented by a lot of insects and maybe a few other things. And our understanding of their diet from this region is poor. Then when they come down to the northeast, Nagaland, we now know there's an independent study that has been going on. We now know that they feed, they gorge on termites. There's a lot of termite emergence that takes place during their stay here. So 3 to 4 weeks that they spend here, they are fattening up just on termites. Perfect, fattening food item for them. Non-stop flight across into Somalia. And then when they go down into Africa, there is some amount of information available on diet here. Again, they switch to an insectivorous diet, but they're opportunistic. They could even catch birds, they could catch lizards, and but primarily small-bodied prey. They're very small raptors. They are definitely playing a very important ecosystem service, or to the service to the farmers. They definitely keep a check on the insect pests. So very, very, very important species. So harvesting them in such large numbers in Nagaland can actually impact use. So very important. So moving on, now, like I told you, this study did definitely give us ideas about where all they stop over. So Nagaland, the Northeast India, Nagaland and Manipur, major stopover site. And this is primarily during October, November, during their southbound migration. After this, the next major stop is in Somalia. So from here on, their behavior will change. They don't make those non-stop flights, but gradual flights flying down straight into South Africa or Southern Africa and Botswana in the Kalahari Desert, and amazing landscapes that they travel through. So in fact, I most of Africa through the eyes of the Amur, flying over the Kilimanjaro, the Serengeti, and many of the major protected areas, the Tsavo East and Tsavo West National Park, and then all the way down to Kruger and many of these fabulous protected areas that we get to see on Discovery Channel. So after spending 3 months here, January, February, March, down in southern Africa, they moved back to Somalia. So Somalia is possibly the falcon capital in Africa. So this is like a gateway. So moving in and moving out is here, is centered here. So southern parts of Somalia, where the equator is, there are some equatorial rainforests probably, which supports a good amount of, food probably that they stop over, fatten up, and then make these crossing. Now, what is interesting is that on the return migration, they are taking the northerly route, flying along the Arabian coastline, and then cutting into Gujarat. So like those eBird reports earlier, then flying across into northern India, and then across to Nepal, and then to northeast. Now, on one particular occasion, when I was tracking Naga was returning back for the second time. He was almost heading in the direction of Dehradun. Dehradun is right here. So I couldn't believe my eyes as this bird flying over here to see me. And this particular flight is happening during April, May. And here you need to understand that this is happening during during November. And this is during April or towards late April and first week of May. So it didn't stop over, flew across to the Annapurna Mountains, and I was thinking that maybe it's going to cut across into the Tibetan Plateau, but no. It skirted along the Great Himalayan Range, flew back towards northeast and into Nagaland. And what was very interesting is that on the return migration, they don't stop in Nagaland. They are all flying through northeast. They're all flying through their roost sites, but don't make the stop into the Myanmar side and stop over in the Chindwin River Valley, very close to the capital city, Mandalay. They stop there for a few days, and then, but their stopover on the return is also not for that long as we have seen on the southbound migration in Nagaland, and then gradually move up. And on the return, they probably stop over at one site along the China-Vietnam border. There's again a remote mountainous tract, possibly they're getting something to eat there, fatten up and move on. So there's a lot of still stories, gap in the knowledge of what we understand. And arriving here in their breeding grounds, what we now know as Inner Mongolia, this is part of China, and it's similar landscape as Eastern Mongolia. They arrive here in June and spend the 3 months, and the day length here is about 15 hours as compared to what we generally see in India, about 10 to 10 hours on an average, and here it's about 15 hours. So clearly indicating that longer day length, lot more food, perfect area to forage. Possibly the population still moving up into Russia, where they would be foraging. And so having said all this, actually the question is that why do they stop in Nagaland? And for that 3-4 weeks, it is of course food, but there must be something else governing. So when you look up, a bigger picture of what is going on, it's all to do with the monsoon. So we are right now witnessing the southwest monsoon. In Andhra Pradesh or in Tamil Nadu listening to this presentation, you don't receive so much of the southwest monsoon because the Western Ghats are all blocking it, and all of these monsoonal clouds move up and head towards the northeast, and then they start to dissipate here or move along the axis of the Himalayas and start raining in the northwestern part of India. So the monsoon does cover a major part, but the peninsular part of India, the rain shadow areas of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana dry, and they receive their rainfall primarily during the north returning monsoon. So it's so beautiful, this monsoon, which actually builds up in the Antarctic Circle and moves up towards Africa, arriving in the Indian Ocean and then into the Arabian Sea. It builds up and then comes into India as the southwest monsoon, moves up to the northeast and dissipates by September. But it builds back again and it transforms itself into the northeast monsoon and then starts to return in this direction towards Sundarbans along coastal Odisha and northern parts of Visakhapatnam, and then all the way down south, and then goes towards the Arabian Sea. So when we started overlaying these tracks to understand what was going on, this is the data of Naga. For 4 years, we were tracking this bird, And all through these 4 years, amazing convergence in their migratory path. Clearly showed that this particular bird seemed to know this particular route. It appeared like it did not know, only knew this flyway or this expressway up in the sky that it would fly. Now, when we overlaid this with the winds, that was when we got the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that the northeast monsoon, the winds are all oriented in this direction and they head out into the Arabian Sea. And when these winds are moving into the Arabian Sea, it strengthens up or it builds up as the easterly winds and and enters into the African continent, the Great Horn of Africa where the Somalia is. So this rain or these winds, the easterlies, actually bring the monsoon to Africa. It goes down all the way down to South Africa. So the Amurs on their journey, southbound journey, they're following these monsoon winds and going into Africa. So they're following the rains. On the return migration, they are making this flight during mid-April or May. At that point of time, the southwest monsoon is still not arrived. So they're not waiting for the southwest monsoon to wait, then they will get delayed. So they need to reach there earlier. And what we witnessed during these summer months here, or during the April months, is that hot winds that's blowing across the western part of India. This is primarily coming from Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. These are hot winds. And that's how we witness summer here in northern India. Birds are riding those winds. So when I say hot winds, it's not that they're going in hot winds. They're flying at a certain elevation where those winds are cool enough for them to fly. And time the winds are oriented only in this direction. And that's why they make this elliptical migration. So really super smart birds, they know when exactly to fly across and make these non-stop flights. The Arabian Sea crossing is 3 days journey, about 2,500 kilometers, day and night flight. So incredible and amazing. So just when we started looking at these tracks and we started sensing a pattern that they will go down this way and they will come back. One particular bird that is very, very dear to me. Of course, all of the other Amurs, you become emotionally attached to them. But this one is something very, very special. This bird is known as longlang and named from that Yonggimchen roost site, which is one of the second major roosting sites of the Amurs there. And this particular bird, on its return migration from Africa, from Somalia, it did something different. It flew towards Gujarat, but skirted the boundary, the coastline of Saurashtra and entered into India in Mumbai. Then it did something still incredible, that is start heading towards southern India. It came down towards Bangalore and then to Kolar and then returned back via the Tirupati hills, fly back. So many of you sitting there from in Andhra Pradesh, you may be able to relate to this bird. And this is the data of the first year. But she is now active for the 4th consecutive year. And all through these 3 years or 4 years now that we are tracking her, on her return migration, she would do the same thing, come down to southern India. So for her, visiting southern India or the Tirupati hills is like going on a pilgrimage again to southern India and then head back up to the northeast and then fall in line or follow the same route as what others did, go back to Inner Mongolia and breed. So incredible birds, and our understanding of this is still poor. Okay, and so there could be many other populations doing things differently. There could be birds cutting across Bay of Bengal and doing that. Now, there's one more very interesting information that I had to share with you. Every time that longlang arrived to peninsular India, there was a cyclonic storm building up in the Bay of Bengal. And in 2019, there was the cyclonic storm, Fanny, that was moving up along. And she was late in arriving. And she was just crossing Mumbai, and the cyclone had already reached the Odisha coast. And she started flying the cyclone. I was like curious, what's going to happen? Hey, this is going into the cyclone. But she there and stopped at that particular location, very close to the coast, waited for the cyclone to make the landfall, and then immediately fly the next day, catching on the tailwinds of particular cyclone is carrying her away really, really fast into the northeast. So they're amazed, possibly pressure, low pressure or high pressure at far off places they're able to sense. So I am now in a position to say that when longleg arrives in southern India, I know that there is a cyclone building up. And true to that fact, at least across those 3 years, there was the cyclone that was moving up. And the last cyclone was last year. She did not wait for Cyclone Amphan. And you may know that Cyclone Amphan was being predicted for a long time. And she waited and waited and waited. She decided, I'm not going to wait any longer. And she left, and the Cyclone Amphan still did arrive. Okay, so incredible story. So Longleg saga has been amazing. She has given so much of data. It's something like a dream to gather information on one particular individual for years together. And as I speak, she continues to be there in the northern China, in breeding in that particular area. And it's amazing to again see that they show high site fidelity. The nesting site fidelities, they seem to go back to that same tree where they will nest. And another incredible fact about these birds is that they don't make their own nest. They actually use the by magpies and other corvids in that particular region. So there is 1 million Amur falcons that we see. So there must be an incredible number of all of these other host species, the nests of which that these Amurs use. So it's incredible, more than 10,000 locations. And I'm really, really hopeful, and I'm praying every day that she continues to give us data and come back one more time to the Northeast again this time. The people of Longleg every Sunday that she does well and she comes back and keeps setting this record. So while all of these efforts was going on in Nagaland, there was a lot of media coverage that was spreading far and wide across the Northeast. Naturally, it spread to all of the other parts of Northeast, Mizoram, Manipur, Assam, and Meghalaya, and Tripura. And a lot of people started reporting that there's a lot of Amurs coming to our village. There's a roost site here. But we did hear about this particular area, Tamenglong district, where a lot of Amur falcons were roosting. And same problem, a lot of them were being hunted out. So naturally, this project, evolved into the next initiative that's known as the Amur Falcon Conservation Initiative. It was started in 2018, and a similar satellite tracking birds from there. And that's what the people wanted of tracking birds here. Whether to understand their migration or not is one thing, but they wanted the bird named after. So we did catch 2 birds that year, and we did name the bird Manipur, and the next bird is Tamenglong from the roost site, the only roost site that was known to us. We did catch the birds there. Unfortunately, after 2 days, Manipur was shot down when she had moved to another roost site close by, which we did not know. And this hunter actually took the bird and took it to the department and said, I had shot this bird and it so happened that it had something on it. And immediately the department staff called up to say that I had still not left Manipur. I was still very much there. And the next day, the transmitter landed up with the Minister of Forests for Manipur. And then we were there with him, and it was a very, very disappointing thing that, such an initiative, and it's a major, major setback. But believe me, as I say this bird's death did not just go waste. The bird Manipur being shot down was no doubt a huge embarrassment for the Forest Department, for the people of Tamenglong, for the people of Manipur. How can you shoot down a bird named after your state? So there was a candlelight march. There was a lot of animal activists who were voicing what was going on, and all of this had to be stopped and things like that. And this did capture the media. I mean, the media did capture this, and a lot of information went across. It would have been just like, one more place they did the tagging and the bird went, it was named Manipur, it was named Tamenglong or something like that. And so it actually captured the attention of a lot more people. So I'm saying that this did not go waste. And now today, you would not believe, at the time of the Amur's arrival, for 3 months, all of the guns are withdrawn, at least in many of these villages. So you do not see any longer that mass scale hunting taking place, and it's all the people coming forward to take pledge and support the conservation initiative. So 2019 we went back again, this time with 5 more transmitters and with a lot more conservation awareness done. As promised, we went back and caught birds and named them after different roost sites. Now we know there are many more roost sites. In fact, the capture and tagging of this bird was done in the roost site where the previous year Manipur was shot down. So when I interacted with the people, they said, we did not know that there was something like this going on. We were just shooting birds like we do every year. It's incredible. It's amazing what we could achieve in this short span of time. And again, like I told you earlier, one of the fantastic conservation success stories. So to close my presentation, I'm almost across my time. Just again, a beautiful cartoon that had captured the story. I'm going to read out. This cartoon basically reads this, that you arrested this boy for hunting birds. So there's a cop basically telling this to the forest staff who had brought a hunter and holding a bird in his hand saying that please arrest him, he's hunted a bird. So the cop is telling him, well, you idiot, this bird is not Amur Falcon, this is Tragopan. Let the boy go. So the awareness about Amur Falcon is so much that they have literally forgotten their own state bird, which is the Blythe's Tragopan. Okay, so this is to be taken on a lighter note, but the point is that how initiatives like this can actually change the mindsets of people, and so is the case. And so today, when you go back to any of these roost sites where you see these spectacle of Amur falcons roosting, you also see the spectacle of the local people who once just ate these birds, now standing and watching these birds in amazement. So that's what we want to see this change. We want to see this change in the mindset, in the attitude of the people, and you need to connect them emotionally. Okay, and so I would say that we are still in the process of achieving that, but no doubt you do see signs of that taking place, and this clearly is an indication that seeds of conservation has already been sown. It is just a question of time that things will improve and will change. So whenever I make this presentation, a lot of people still ask me, how could this happen? I mean, 1 year, Nagaland, of all places, Nagaland and Manipur, where people eat everything. How could this happen? 1 year, 100,000 to 150,000 birds killed, and next year you're saying that it is zero hunting. So administrative orders banning hunting, no doubt, stop them from hunting in the initial years, saying that if you don't hunt, if you don't stop hunting, then we will freeze all the village development funds. Media campaign. Here is again a situation where media brought it to the attention of every one of us, but the same media played a major role in stories of conservation. So that was again important. So when they started hearing that Pankti is returning, every other villages felt that, we should also name our birds. So, media played a major role. Conservation awareness, incredible number of people on the ground, effort in creating, and with the support of the church, the pastors, the archbishop, and everybody involved with the church institution really made a big difference. Community ownership. The communities also decided that, hey, this is part of our culture. We need to protect birds. We need to protect the biodiversity. They started owning it up. And then the conservation initiative, which is the satellite tracking part, which WI had initiated in the initial phase, and of course, all through these years, has actually brought in that information which is required. But all of said and done, at the end of the day, it is the pride. So we need to instill this pride in people, in feeling that we did this. This is because of us. This is our effort. These birds are ours. So that I would say really brought in this change. One last story before I close. I'm sorry, like I told you earlier, we have lots of stories, but this is again a very interesting event that happened in 2015, the year when our minister Prakash Javadekar Sahab, when he was going to come to Nagaland, just before traveling around. And one evening, I was with my friends who had come, and they had a 10-year-old son accompanied who was very keen to see the Amurs. He was with me. We had gone down to the roost site to see these birds arriving into roost, and then the light was fading, and we were starting on our return, moving up on the slope. And just then, this kid who was watching, looking around, he suddenly said, "Uncle, just look at this. There is a pigeon." And I said, "How can there be a pigeon here?" So we just stopped, and we saw this last flock of Amurs coming in, hover in front of us, picking up termites that were emerging, one last meal for the day, and just leaving off. One of my friends from Mumbai, Nikhil Nagle, who was carrying a bazooka lens, a big lens, he was keen to take a picture of the Amurs. And I put my glasses my binoculars to see what that pigeon-like bird is. Couldn't believe my eyes. It's an all-white Amur falcon. So I just told this guy, just shoot the bird. Just get a picture of this bird. This is 1 in a million Amur falcons. It's an all-white. It's a leucistic form. It's not an albino. It's a leucistic form. And he shot the picture. So thankfully, when I went back up there and he had this picture, I told the community leader and all the people in the village, I told them, something very, very interesting, something very unique. We saw an all-white Amur falcon in your village. And you know what their response was? The response was, because of our conservation efforts, God has blessed us. He sent us an angel, and they wanted to call it the Snow White. And this was covered in the media the next day. And in every other village now, people were looking for, the local people and others were looking for this angel, the Snow White, all white. And the discussion was here that went to this level that we are not doing enough in our village. That's why Snow White is not coming, or the angel is not coming to our village. So we need to do more for conservation. So that was again an incredible story. And a whole lot of people behind the stories who are there to help with this work, undoubtedly. And many of them have become my real close friends, and we all together look for the Amurs every year. So thank you very much for patiently listening to me, and hope I was clear enough in trying to tell you the story about these incredible birds. And like I told you, every time I look at the Amurs, look into their still mysteries. There's still so much to know about them. That keeps me going, that keeps me excited. And yes, incredible stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suresh. It was indeed a wonderful presentation for us. I hear claps. I hear claps. Actually, yes. It definitely deserves a standing ovation for the works which have been done in that region. David, uncle, any thoughts on that?
I'm still trying to recover from the talk. Awesome. Awesome. But maybe let's get on to the questions here, Srikant.
So, yes,
please.
would be getting on to the questions now. So first question is from Geetanjali Rajaram. To stop the people from hunting, did the government or NGOs offer them other opportunities for their livelihood?
Meat was given. WTI gave meat for meat.
So do I go ahead and respond to that?
Yeah, please, you can. I'll be reading out the questions so you can answer them one by one.
Okay, so let me answer this question. Yes, that's a very important question. It's about livelihoods, and to be honest, we're still trying to figure a way out. Okay, there was an initial excitement about starting off ecotourism and things like that, and the government of Nagaland did try and raise some money from the central government to start some tourism related. No doubt tourism is important, it's required, but from our understanding of how the Amurs are using this landscape, all that I advise the government or the department is that please do not invest in hard infrastructure. When we talk about tourism, they get the money, build some cottages in a particular, say, for example, Pangti. Pangti is where the focus is still more because the road access is there. A lot of people know about Pangti more, and so a lot of people travel to Pangti, but not many people go to Longlang or the other route sites. So a lot of investment was foreseen or was being planned for Pangti. So I had told them that please don't invest in hard infrastructure simply because What we know now is that these birds continue to shift their roost sites. 2012, that particular year, or maybe the year earlier to that, a lot of these birds started arriving in very large numbers simply because they had moved from some other roost site over here. There are several where people were protecting them way back in 2009, just seeing that sheer number which we never got to know. And those people are saying that we started protecting this place, but today the Amurs are not coming to our village. They all have gone off to Pangti. So Amurs are shifting their roost site. So looking at tourism as an alternative is going to be a challenge. Of course, it's important, but I have told them, I mean, or rather the research that we see that investing in hard infrastructure is difficult. So what else do we do? It's a very, very difficult question. We're still trying to figure out. There has to be some other way. And there are situations. See, I have tried to tell you all the good stories. There are still challenges. There are still people in some of these villages who still feel that the government, what they have promised, they have not done. We are going to start hunting these birds. You know, I am now of this opinion that, you know, even if they start hunting, that's my biggest fear. They have built such a good story. Now, even if there is going to be one incident where they go back and he'll kill 100,000 birds again, then all of these years of effort is going to go waste. But thankfully, they so much that the Naga people themselves, the villagers themselves would not want such a thing. So I am kind of assured that that kind of an episode will not take place. And as a result, they are still trying to find how better they can improve their livelihood, trying to solve issues with the human-elephant conflict that they're facing. But yeah, so I'm going around and telling you this story because there doesn't seem to be a straightforward answer. But let me also give you the other picture. That at least in many of the other villages where I raised this point about, or highlighted this point about community ownership, these people are of the opinion that we don't need anything. This is part of our culture. These birds coming here is part of their life cycle. So we are happy that they're coming to a village. We really don't need anything. They don't really care. Possibly would like the government to recognize that, yes, we are protecting these birds. No? So yes, so there are different views. I think it's still a challenge working towards that. Okay.
So just a follow up to what you said regarding people relapsing for going back to hunting these birds, right? What could be a trigger point? What could be a potential trigger point?
See, there are these other issues that we also need to understand. Very often we feel that the government is not doing much. Or now when it comes to wild species, protection of wild species, it is the mandate of the forest department. That's the department concerned with. Now here in Nagaland, it's a very, very different situation. Same in the northeastern parts of Tamenglong or in major parts of Manipur, where the land ownership is with the communities. Nearly 98% of the land or 95% of the land ownership is of the communities in Nagaland at least. And as a result, it is the communities who dictate what they will be doing. And so in some of these areas, some of these roost sites, the land where these birds roost, the entire land belongs to the community, belongs to the village. So there is a village council who take a call and, you know, they have a control over that, what each individual in the village does. So in fact, in one of these villages, especially Yongyamchen, where they have imposed fines, anybody found hunting or shooting, he will be imprisoned and 20,000 rupees fine. And they continue to practice that even till today. But in the case of Pangti, the situation is different. The land where these birds are roosting, it belongs to the clan. So actually different parcels of land belong to different individuals. So some individuals are pro-conservation, some individuals don't care, or, you know, they have not much to do. So again, trying to, you know, the trigger point, the flash point, it can happen. So the thing is that there is a sense of pride which has gone a little to the extreme also, I would say. Some people have taken it so much that they're feeling that everything about Amur Falcon should be only, but they still are not able to understand. So what we are trying to educate people about is that the Amurs do not belong to your village alone. They belong to the entire landscape. So as part of my work, we are looking at something what is known as the Amur Arc. The Amur Arc actually extends all along, all the way from Meghalaya into the Patkai Hills and into the Chin Hills in Myanmar. So this Amur Arc, the birds could go roost anywhere. There are potential roost sites elsewhere also. So we are trying to educate people that, if you resort to killing, then the birds would. So don't really know what the trigger point could be. But yes, the trigger point is that the government is not doing much. Okay. The government needs to do more. They want a road, metal road leading to the village. Unfortunately, things don't happen very well in Nagaland. And the money is given to the communities only to build the road. Where they themselves misuse those funds and the road never appears. So corruption is one of the biggest this place.
Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you for that answer. So the next question is by Commander Yella Prakash Rao, and he asks, what was the altitude of their migration?
What is the attitude of?
Altitude of the migration.
Altitude of the migration. Okay, so this is something that we still don't know. These tags don't log, the heights at which they fly. They just give you the location. So we still don't know. But given their body size and from the wind patterns that they are probably using, it appears that they're probably flying somewhere between 1,000 meters to 2,500 meters.
So, sorry, your mic went on mute, please. You went on mute, sir.
Mute.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
Okay, so what I'm basically saying is that we don't know about the heights or the altitude at which these birds fly, because these tags that we have deployed on them don't carry that altimeter. Okay, and from what we understand, we believe is that it's between 1,000 to 2,000 meters is what they're flying at. Their flight height could be. Okay, because it is that at that height is where these winds, heading towards Africa, either on the southbound migration. That's how these winds are. So if they're definitely using those winds. So I told you earlier that they're flying 5,600 kilometers, 5 days, 10 hours. That amounts to 45 kilometers per hour. So 45 kilometers per hour, their effort kilometers per hour, because their tailwind is about 25 kilometers per hour. And this tailwind is our situation. If you go higher up, then the wind, because at different heights, there are different winds flowing in different directions. So we still don't know the exact height at which they're flying.
True. Okay. Thank you, sir. And Commander, sir, I think, hope your question is answered. Next question is by Vasant Rajan. The question is, the monolith is at what place? At Pankti, I didn't see in October 2015.
Sorry, Shrikant, I really cannot hear you well.
The monolith is at what place? At Pankti, I did not see in October 2015.
He did not see what?
He did not see any Amurs in October 2015.
When was the time when he went there? Because their arrival into Nagaland or Northeast can be delayed by a week. So it is generally from 20th of October onwards and till 15th of November. So if you go a few days earlier, you may not see them.
Okay. So Mr. Vasant Rajan, I think you might just type in your...
Because can I just button for a second?
Yeah, sure, Ramesh.
Dr. Suresh, he was referring to the monolith.
Yes, please. You did not see the monolith.
He was referring to the monolith.
it was the monolith, is it? Okay,
Right.
sorry,
Oh,
I
yes.
didn't hear that very well. Okay, so the monolith, okay, it was not there when you went there?
No, no, apparently not.
Okay, so there are some tension with the villagers. Okay, they're not happy with the government, and they were trying to boycott with the government. Saying that you had promised a lot of things. So there is also this other challenge. Very often when we take up conservation work, we try to promise a lot of things to people, and it is also to do with the higher officials coming in. They do take notice. So if you look at the number of visitors to Pangti, almost all of the high profile visitors have all come to Pangti. It's only a bit actually gone to the other villages. So the high thing that it has also worked against much of the effort. So everyone who's gone has tried to has tried to say that, okay, we will try to take this up. But somehow, something or the other, it has been caught up. For example, the elephant issue, WTI is currently undertaking some program and trying to resolve the conflict. But on the ground, the situation is really, really bad every year. So for them, you have promised so many things, but you have not done. So, so as a result, I do know that one or two of those years when they have tried to block into their village last year, the year before, they didn't want any bird watchers to visit the village. They felt that what is the need of tourism? Okay, and there has also been some conflict amongst the villagers also. So that there are communities who feel that they have done most for conservation of Amurs, but they have not been acknowledged properly, or the other community in the village has taken over. These are small rifts that is there. So this is happening in Pangti. So Pangti does require a lot more hand-holding, and it's not easy. So possibly the monolith disappeared because of that issue. But I'm sure it will be put back in its place, because I know that now the situation in Pangti is better.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And actually, just going through the questions. The next question is by. I'm sorry. Just give me a moment. Yeah, by Mujib, and the question is, why they cross the Western Ghat for straight flying, or why are they diverting from here? I'm expecting from Western Ghats. Also, he heard that they didn't cross the Himalayas also. Why?
Okay, so if you look at like I told you again, they're very, very smart birds. So if you see the western coast of India, Mumbai south, and maybe north of Karwar in Karnataka, that particular belt is where most of the Amurs are funneling in and heading into the north, into Somalia. So you will need to visualize the way the seascape is, or the globe. Okay, so this is actually the shortest distance if they want to cross the Arabian. And taking if they are going to make a crossing, say from Thiruvananthapuram, and heading out towards the maybe going all the way down to Mauritius, and then going into across into South Africa, because their end destination, if it is South Africa, why should they go via Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, and then go down? They could go straight from here, but will involve a very large distance over the Indian Ocean, okay, which is going to be detrimental for them. It's a huge risk factor. Having said this, there are quite a few sightings of these birds in these oceanic islands, Seychelles, and there is a British Indian Ocean territory in the Indian Ocean, a small speck, and there have been quite a few sightings there. I personally think all of these birds had got drifted off in those winds because of the way. And there could be vagrants. Sometimes they just fly off in a particular direction and then get carried away in the winds, or they could be inexperienced birds. So if I have to explain to you logically why they are just crossing from here, from Mumbai, straight across into Mumbai, it's because that oceanic crossing there is about 2,500 kilometers. Anywhere further lower, much, much longer. And on the return migration, they don't cross the, okay, so they are not returning or they're not flying over the Himalayas or the Tibetan plateau. This is a dry zone and the winds are quite unpredictable. And they are again on the return migration after coming into the north, not making a non-stop flight. So the non-stop flights are only between the northeast to Somalia and then back. Now, after they leave Nagaland or the northeast, they again gradually move. So they forage all through their route to move up. And these birds prefer to forage in, or they find their food. They find their food in these areas and not in this very high elevation Tibetan plateau. It's about 5,000 meters, and it's not something. And please also understand that when they move, when they arrive in their eastern steppe, which is in the month of June, the first week of June, that is when the summer is also setting in. So before that, it is still cold up there here in the Tibetan plateau. And as a result, these birds are avoiding this.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I hope that answers Mujib's question. And next question is by Dr. H.S. Pabla. Sir asks, are there any mass hunting sites anywhere else on their migratory routes?
So in Africa or in any other places in along their migration route?
Yeah, any other places along the migratory route?
Okay, so sir, we are really not aware of that. Somalia is where they gather in such large numbers, and once they leave Somalia, then they are scattered. Then you don't see them in such large numbers. Even in Southern Africa, in the roost sites, we don't have any sites like what you see in Nagaland. So they're all scattered. The largest population in a roost site in South Africa will be 25,000. And there is no killing of this bird reported from any of these places. What I suspect may happen is in Southeast Asia, or when they are heading via Vietnam and China, and some of those places where they stop over, but we don't have any information. We really don't have any information.
Okay. Right. So the next question is by JVD Murthy, sir, and the question is, how many Amur Falcons are still alive today?
Shrikant, I missed out the word. The tagged Amurs, the ones which are tagged. Of these, how many are still alive today?
There are many questions. It doesn't get
Hello?
Of the ones that have been tagged, how many are still alive today? How many are still on record?
Okay, so there are right now which are still active. One more bird which has been giving us, been quite erratic in its response. All of a sudden, it starts off. There is some technical issues with. So I can say as of now there are 4, and thankfully the birds that have been tagged from Manipur did make the return migration from Africa, and they are now in the breeding grounds. And I'm really betting my hopes that those birds come back to Manipur, and that will really be a big achievement for the program and for the people there.
Lovely.
So right now there are 4.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. So another question by Vasant Rajan. Any monitoring station established at Somalia or South Africa?
Very interesting question.
No need. No one will go to Somalia.
I'll have to go to Somalia. I'll just sail off, and meet up with the Somalian pirates and land up there. So I had tried to make, on a personal note, I tried to make contacts with bird watchers in Somalia. Maybe some of you who are in the bird watchers network can actually help me, get me Somalian bird watchers. There are a few people going watching birds. So I don't have any monitoring stations, but there are long-term ringing sites in South Africa. So even before these tracking programs were started, in South Africa, there's one lady and her team particularly, she's been ringing Amurs for a long time, 25, 30 years, I think. She's been ringing birds regularly. And she has been successful in getting a few recaptures. And a few of the birds were actually, the ringed birds were actually killed actually caught in 2012. So a lot of the hunters in the Pankti village did inform me about having those rings with them. So yes, that is the only monitoring that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Other than in Northeast now that we are monitoring them.
BC, so you wanted to say something?
No, I was telling about Somalia. I think in 1990, I almost got killed in Somalia. I was doing a crocodile survey in Somalia. And I knew the Somalian Ecological Society who were doing a lot of bird watching. They actually took me to see the Goliath heron and some other birds, and I went around with them to see. But Somalia, if you say this is my only life, then you can go to Somalia. And no one is going to take the risk of going to Somalia and start a monitoring program. At least current situation, pirate in the sea is one part of it, but in the land, the kind of problems, different tribes, into different groups, there is, you never know when you will be wiped out.
True. So, thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that experience, and we are glad you're back safe and sound.
Yeah.
Yes. So, so the next question is by Murtaza. When do we see Amurs in Gujarat?
Okay, so the best time to see Amurs in Gujarat is
April.
The last week of April, and ideally along the Porbandar coastline. And I think there have been a few people who have gone excitedly looking for Amurs, thinking that they may actually spot them. And in fact, they did spot them. So I think the last week of April and last week of April all the way till middle of May is the time when they pass through. It's not just one specific day.
Yeah. Yes. So
Next year.
Last week of April next year, I think, guys, this year, unfortunately, due to lockdown, you would have missed that. But
yes.
Next year, please keep a lookout for that.
Yes.
So the next question again is by JVD sir, and the question is, could you please tell us about the satellite tagging of Jacobin's cuckoo? That is the first part of the question. Yes.
Okay. So the pied cuckoo has been a dream bird for me. Actually, it was one of those birds that I dreamed about tagging even before the Amurs happened. The Amurs happened all of a sudden. So the pied cuckoo has been a bird in one of my target lists since maybe 2000. And thankfully now with the technology available, the tag that we have deployed on the pied cuckoo is just 2 grams. The Amurs are carrying a tag which is 5 grams. So I may have forgotten to mention this. Any instrument, anything that you deploy on a wild species, there is a thumb rule. If it is a bird, the thumb rule is that it has to be less than 3% of their body weight.
Oh, I see.
Or Amur may not be able to the Arabian Sea. You may diving down into the Arabian Sea. So the weight is one of the challenge. And so the tag, that 5-gram transmitter that we've been very successful on the Amurs, we couldn't use that for the pied cuckoo because the pied nearly half the weight of the Amurs. They just weigh about 70 grams. So anything less than 3% of their body weight should be about 2.5 grams or close to that. And thankfully in 2017, the same company who manufacture these 5-gram tags, the microwave telemetry from the United States, have started making this 2-gram transmitter available, And so, so this particular project happened. And as you all know, the pied cuckoo is a summer breeding visitor to India, another trans-equatorial migrant coming all the way from Africa, coming to the Himalayan foothills, and then going back. And this is the monsoon bird. And this bird tells you the story of the southwest monsoon. This bird flies with the southwest monsoon, while the Amurs fly with the northeast monsoon. So they, in a way, complement each other. While one is a passage migrant, the other is a breeding visitor, summer breeding visitor. So we do have a lot of summer breeding visitors at this point of time in Dehradun.
Okay.
So last year, if I may just share this with you a little bit, we had conceived this project about 2 years ago, and luckily we got the money. This is actually a collaborative effort with the Indian Institute for Remote Sensing and funded by the Department of Biotechnology. And they were keen in tracking and getting data which they can relate with the monsoon. So I had told them that this is a fantastic subject. So we got the money, we placed the orders for the transmitters early February 2019 for the transmitters. And unfortunately, the transmitters got delayed and arrived only by end of July. Post-July, we could not catch the pied cuckoo. And it was something new to me, and I was trying to still figure these birds out. It's not going to be easy to catch them. Couldn't catch them. And their cuckoos left. So we had to just sit with these transmitters, sit with our project fund, with the researcher, waiting for one entire year for the cuckoos to arrive again. And unfortunately, this year, the lockdown critically restricted our movements, so we just cannot go like the way we could have, employ more people to help us catch the cuckoos. But thankfully, there were a few cuckoo pairs that were being monitored just outside of the Wildlife Institute campus. So we're really lucky to capture 2 birds that project and tag them. So we have named them, the first bird we have named it Meg Doot, and Meg Cloud is the meaning. And the other bird, we have named it after the local name, which is Chatak. So we are quite excited, hoping that Meg and Chatak give us some insights into their migration. Do they go via Gujarat, or do they go in a different direction? They definitely, I believe they make these non-stop migrations. I have seen pied cuckoos in Gujarat during my field trips there, and I'm strongly believe that they are making these. What is very interesting to share here is that the cuckoos, and there are many other summer migrants coming into Gujarat. Gujarat is another major gateway. Your blue-cheek bee-eaters, European rollers, large numbers, large populations of these birds coming into Gujarat, especially the Kutch landscape. A lot of bird watchers go looking for them. They spend about, I would say, roughly a month. They arrive by October and spend 1 month there. So like the Amur spending time in the Northeast, these birds are spending time here. But I have a feeling that they don't leave till the time the Amurs start on their migration, in the sense that they are again waiting for that returning northeast monsoon winds to hop on and just sail across or glide across and sea to Somalia, to the Great Horn of Africa. So Gujarat is our western gateway, and Nagaland and Manipur is our eastern gateway. So it's very interesting. I'm really hopeful that our cuckoos will give us data. Please pray that these birds stay alive. And the transmitters should work. The biggest challenge is that the transmitters should work.
Of course.
That's true.
That's the absolutely interesting fact, because yes, we've seen them
loud.
May I put in something very quickly, please?
Yes.
So the Amurs can also be called something like monsoon birds, like the Jacobin's cuckoo or the pied cuckoo is? Or is there a correlation between the two? Within a certain period of time after the sighting of the Amurs, the pied cuckoo would come in?
So the cuckoos are definitely arriving only by the first week of, or by the last week of May and June, that is the time. So they may be also returning and riding those winds, but they are a little late. They are definitely not, or you're right, or we don't know. So if I'm just looking at it from Dehradun and I'm expecting the cuckoos to arrive in the first week of June, maybe they have already arrived in India, that is in Gujarat, and then spending time in Gujarat and then moving slowly up to Dehradun or Indian plains. You don't know. Yeah, that's a possibility. That could happen.
So there could be a correlation, a periodicity or a regularity of the first arrival of the Amurs at the end of April, and then maybe.
It's a hypothesis.
Yes. It's a hypothesis. Yes, it's only a hypothesis.
Hypothesis. And you got to test it.
Let's be easy.
Don't come to a conclusion.
No, I'm not coming to a conclusion, but there could be, it's a possibility. It has not been looked into.
It's a hypothesis, so it needs testing.
Right. Thank you, BC. Thank you.
So just in addition to that, I mean, there is also a working theory, or I could say a talk about Jacobin's cuckoo or the pied cuckoo be a population of which is resident in the country.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how do we differentiate these?
Okay, so that's very interesting actually. See this. I mean, this is not specific to the cuckoos.
Are we changing the subject from Amur Falcon to Jacobian cuckoo?
Not totally sure.
So,
Okay.
Let's stick to Amur Falcon. I think let's not divert our topic to something else.
yes.
Sorry, BC, my fault. Sorry. Yes, Shrikant, please take the questions on Amur Falcon.
Murthy, you should be put on a leash.
I'm sorry. I am sorry, BC. Shrikant, please go to the questions, please.
I will continue here. So there are two questions, one by Mr. Prem Thomas and other by Nandakumar sir. The question is, how high do they fly? I think
That's
That's been
already
answered.
answered.
the Amur Falcons.
That's been answered.
that's
That's been
been
answered.
So since that they have been answered, so Uncle, I think you've got your answer there. Next question is by Bhuminathan. While returning to South Africa, do they move as mass numbers?
In South Africa?
Yes. While returning to South Africa, yes. In South Africa.
In South Africa, they don't move in mass numbers, but it's simply because they do show wintering site fidelity. Okay, the site fidelity thing is very important in the sense that they go to their respective foraging grounds. So we are looking at Southern Africa as their non-breeding or their foraging grounds or the wintering grounds. So some of the birds go and forage in Botswana, in the Kalahari region, while the others are roosting in agricultural landscape in South Africa, close to Johannesburg or close to Pretoria. So there are different roost sites. So they are having to funnel into Nagaland in mass, primarily because of those winds that they wait out for. Okay, and then once they are in Somalia, then again they're on their own, going and foraging in their foraging grounds. And when it is time for them to depart, they again convert. So you don't see them in mass numbers.
Okay.
There could be another factor that is governing here, the availability of food. The kind of concentration of food that is available in Northeast or in Nagaland and Manipur, that kind of concentration is in other parts of their, whether it's the breeding grounds or in the wintering grounds. So it is basically dictated by termites. The sheer, if you're talking about Amur Falcon, the congregation as the spectacle, then you should actually look at the termite emergence, super spectacle. So it's just millions and millions of termites that are just coming out of the ground every day for that 3 to 4 weeks. That so it is being dictated by food.
Okay. Right. Thank you. So again, I have to say there are so many messages here appreciating the talk, and everyone. It was indeed a great pleasure for everybody to hear this talk. So there's so much of appreciation in the messages for us. So the next question is by Prati Chitnis. The question is, could you share the website where we can track the bird migration?
Okay, so you can actually look up in this URL, which is very simple, satellitetracking.eu. So this is actually some of my Hungarian collaborators who host their birds on it, and they are hosting some of these birds up there. It's called satellitetracking.eu, satellite tracking written together.eu. And all that you need to do is, they are in different languages or scripts. So choose the English language, and then there is a section called birds. There is a series of tabs, and choose the tab birds. And once you click on that, then you will get a database of all of those birds that are currently being tracked or in the past that were tracked in that database. So in the database, if you go and choose the tab country or the region, then India you can select. If you select India, then all of the Amurs that have been tagged and tracked, they are listed there. So choose one of the birds and go and say, choose the tab center, and it will show you the map and show you the current location.
Thank you, sir. And also I've pasted the URL on the chat. So you guys, I mean, anyone interested can please look it up.
Yes, yes, yes.
So the next question again, sir, is
Dr. Sukumar.
Dr. Samuel Sukumar, Suresh, your involvement of the local community is the
What is the weight loss? Srikant, I'm sorry. He says, what is the weight loss of a bird?
No, after that, it is, okay, it's much ahead after that, okay.
Yeah, a little further down, he says, what is the weight loss of the
What
bird?
is
So if you're asking about what is the weight loss of the bird, if that is the question?
Yes, during the oceanic crossing.
Okay, so when the Amurs are arriving in Nagaland, at that time they are in poor body mass. The thing is, you have to remember that they have just finished breeding and they have made a 5,000 kilometer flight to Nagaland. And here in Nagaland, the muscle mass, especially on the breast muscles, are very poor. So it is here in Nagaland that they fatten up. So they put on weight here in Nagaland. And how will I know this? If you talk to the local hunters who have been hunting them, they don't prefer to eat the birds when they have just arrived. They wait for the bird to fatten up. That's what they say. So only towards the time of departure, they would like to eat this bird. So they are gaining the weight here. So they could easily lose 20 grams weight. If it's a 50 gram bird, it can easily lose 20 grams.
Okay. So this is during crossing especially, right? Is this during the oceanic crossing?
That how can they? Where are they going to weigh them? Simple, I think. One need to know. This is only caught here. They are not being caught elsewhere. To weigh them and to see how much of weight loss they have taken.
That is true. That is true, sir. So just moving on to the next question, it's by Sagarika Melkote. I have a doubt. The aerial of the transmitter, I think she means the aerial of the transmitter seems to be long and like couple of wires sticking out behind the bird. Yeah, the antenna.
Yes, so there is an antenna that has to that is designed to stick out of the bird, and it is not something like it is quite flexible, and that is what actually helps transmit the signals and the satellites to pick up. Without that antenna, they wouldn't
even signal.
Yes. So the next part of the question is there any danger that these wires could get caught in a tree or worse in an electric cable?
No. There is no such a case. It just cannot get caught, because this, even though it is quite flexible enough, it will just not coil up or something like that. It's quite straight and stiff.
Okay.
So it is in line with the posture of the.
Suresh, the number of birds you have tagged and the results itself shows there is not even one case where you have lost.
You're right,
sir. That itself is the answer.
Yes, you're right.
Yes, correct.
You're right.
So the next question: why didn't they cross the Western Ghats for straight Africa?
That's been answered. That's been answered
already. No, I'm just telling the person who asked this question that it has been answered. Mujib. The bird is not crossing Himalayas. Yes, Satyan, even that was answered. So Avinandan has a question. Has the awareness about Amur falcons spilled over to other avifauna, especially the endemics and other unique bird species of Nagaland and Manipur? If not, is there an opportunity to do so?
Yeah, so yes, that's an interesting question again. So the awareness levels are definitely very, very high. And people have started, in fact, at least in Yongyamchen, this particular village, I can tell you that the general feeling amongst the council members about among the villagers is that they want to set aside this particular community land or community forest, and they don't want it to be named as Amur Falcon Conservation Area. They don't want it to be named. They feel that the bird is here only 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks maximum in a year. But there is a lot more diversity in this place, and so we would like it to be called Biodiversity Conservation Area. Okay, and last year, Nagaland government, listed more than 90 community reserves as part of the community reserve network in the country. So Nagaland now has about 120 community reserves. So which is a recognition from the government. And as a result, maybe slowly there will be some funds allocated for each of these areas. And this effort is being taken by local people. The local people have come forward and said that, have actually proposed to the government that we want this land to be declared as a community reserve. It's a proposal from the people. All of these things indicates that at least they're able to protect the habitat. There is still some amount, there is still hunting. There is still hunting for a lot of small birds and a lot of other things. And but at least the first step in protecting those forests, small patches of forest, and gradually, create awareness and protect everything else. It's happening. It's really happening.
Okay.
Not only in Manipur, not only in Nagaland, but also in Manipur.
Okay.
Shall we close the questions now?
There's one last question coming up, BC.
One last question, sir.
One last question.
What makes Doyang Reservoir such a high dense roosting site?
Why Doyang has such a high
density of roosting site?
Density of roosting site.
Food.
Well, I really don't know, but there are also other sites where equally such high density Amur falcons are there, but there are no roost sites. Okay, so it so happened that the reservoir that you see in Doyang, or the Doyang reservoir, actually came up only in 2000 or 2004. The entire submergence took place only in 2004. So the Amurs used to roost underwater. So you go and talk to locals there, the local people, they'll say, "Ye chidiya to pehle pani ke andar roost karta tha."
Before it is submerged.
But the slopes down there, all of that area has now become submerged, and the Amurs have been pushed to the higher slopes, and now we see a large number. There is one more site in the Meghalaya Assam border, the Silchar region of Assam, which is known as Omrang Sao. There is a reservoir there. There again, the Amurs are roosting in very large numbers. So there seems to be a connect with water. And not necessarily, a presence of a reservoir is an additional thing, but water is definitely there. So they will roost along the riverside and on those slopes facing in a particular direction. The aspect is probably playing a role here. And so we are still trying to understand that. So I feel that it is not just presence of reservoir, but it is more to do with water.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we are done with the questions, JVD uncle.
I think we should close now.
I think so. It's quite late now, so I think we'll have to close.
Yes. So
I would like to offer my thanks to Suresh here. Wonderful talk. Absolutely brilliant.
So thank you, Murthy sir. And I would like to just pass my last few statements. Last statement I would like to make here is that please go and tell these stories. We need good stories to be passed around. Now, often we are talking about, of course, bad stories, bad situations, but please pass on these good stories.
Yep.
And word of mouth, this story about Amur falcon conservation can actually bring in conservation in those areas.
I don't know whether the story that I pass on or we pass on will be as colorful and interesting as the story you just told us. But we will be doing our best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Brilliant listening to you.
Thank you.
And
thank you very
my
much.
special thanks to BC as well. Thanks a lot. And this is what old friendship means. He said, "Why don't you have this on Amur Falcons?" And he helped set up the talk. So my special thanks go to BC as well. Thanks a lot, BC.
Thank you.
I only give you good speakers. I always give you good speakers, man.
Yes,
I know,
sir. Yes, sir.
I know that.
We acknowledge that. And
All said and done, Thanks are in order. Even if you don't want them, I will still thank you on.
Okay, okay, I will take it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh.
Suresh, we'd like to have you back some other time.
Especially thanks, Suresh.
Maybe next time we'll speak on the, we'll have something on the pied cuckoo.
Yeah.
All yours,
Very
sir.
serious.
All yours. I'm available.
Suresh,
Yes, sir.
Suresh, I need to thank you.
No problem, sir. Please don't thank me. It was a fantastic.
Thank you,
Thank you
Suresh.
so many people.
That's a wonderful presentation from your side. It's really very nice to see. I have not been to be in Nagaland, but I always be interacting with you. When are you going? When are you going? But it's a lovely presentation.
I always tell her, if you have not seen a Amur, see Suresh.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh.
Coordinating this. Thank you so much. And I think people can write to me if they still have questions. And yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
we will pass on your email address, sir, and maybe they can reach out for any other questions.
Yes.
But
yes.
Thank you so much, sir. The story of long leg, if I'm correct, will always be there in our minds.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. And
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you so much, Suresh. Yeah, it was a great talk.
Good night.
Thank you, Aminan. Hello, Aminan.
Yeah, hi. Long time.
Bye.
Yeah, and for most of our other listeners, next week we have a talk on mangroves, and it has been given by Tej Munkar Saab. So please join us again next Sunday. It will be a wonderful presentation like today.
And 26th July happens to be the International Mangrove Day.
Yes,
that's right.
That's right. Sir. So as a commemorating for that day, we have arranged this talk, and it would be a wonderful talk. Please do join us again and inform your friends as well. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy your dinner, all of you.
And thank you, Dr. Suresh.
Surbi says hi to Nandini. Bhabhi ko bolna.
Nalini, not Nandini. Nalini.
Sorry, Nalini would.
I will tell her.
Right, done.
All of you change her name to Nandini. That's fine.
Yes, sir. Right. Right, Amin. See you.
Okay, see you.
See you.
Great, yeah, it was the best so far. Amazing this thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, and also I think GK joined today. Umesh.
Yeah, GK was there. Yes.
GK was there. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. See you all. Bye.
Guys, see you. Bye bye.